All right, welcome back. We continue now with some more news. According to the Human Science Research Council's Election Satisfaction Survey for 2024, 58% of the voters approached said that they were very satisfied with the ballot papers used in this year's national and provincial election, whilst 38% of those who wanted improvements wanted to change the number of parties and candidates on the ballot paper. But also the survey found that 52% of the voting population said that the IEC voter education campaigns were very useful in providing information and education. So to talk a little bit further about the Independent Electoral Commission's performance in this year's election, we're joined by Terry Tselane, former IEC Vice Chairperson and current Executive Chairman at the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. Terry, good morning. Thanks for your time with the SABC once again at this hour.
Good morning to you and to your viewers, and thank you very much for having me.
The Human Science Research Council's Election Satisfaction Survey for 2024, it's given a slight indication on the voters' perceptions of this year's elections. From your vantage point, what are your views?
Well, I've not gone through the survey as such, but I think it is commendable that we have been able to reach the stage that we have reached, that the results will be presented and that they reflect the will of the people, generally speaking. Of course, there have been some challenges and difficulties, and then those challenges, I think, are things that have got to be addressed going forward by the Commission.
Speaking of which, it has not been an easy election for the IEC. I mean, we've seen minor digital technology setbacks on voting day, resulting in long queues, some political parties now having large disputes. Are these expected when managing an election of this magnitude?
It has not really come to this level in the past. But I think, this is attributable largely to the fact that this were intensely contested elections. They were very tough for political parties as well as for the Commission. There was a lot of pressure on the Commission. I think the time within which the elections took place was also very short. As you know that, in terms of the Constitution, the elections have got to take place within 90 days. They could have easily had these discussions around July, but the president decided that it should be May. So this did not give the Commission sufficient time to really run a smooth election. Some of the electoral staff appeared to be ill-prepared for the task. There was over-reliance on the machine, and then when the machine did not operate or when it failed, they appeared confused in terms of what are the next steps. So those were some of the weaknesses, and I think to a large extent, it is those weaknesses that compromise the capacity of the Commission or the way it is perceived by the general public.
All right. I wonder also, because if we're looking at the processes, the capturing, the auditing, I mean, as a former Vice Chairperson of the IEC, perhaps you could take us through the auditing and capturing process that needs to take place before the final results are declared. Yeah,
so when voting or counting has finished, the Electoral Commission has got to take, or the officials of the Commission have to take this to the municipal offices where the infrastructure of the Commission is located. And then information is captured into the system. But that's where you will also find people who are now called the auditors, in order for them to be able to make sure that before the result is completely submitted, it is actually audited to check whether indeed it reflects what is actually captured in the result slip. So they do that reconciliation at that level before the result is actually submitted to the national or reflected at the national results center in that lead box.
Mr. Tselane, I'm asking this because the IEC maintains that the results systems have remained functional and uncompromised throughout the results compilation process, and that the technical fault on the leaderboard that we experienced had nothing to do with the tampering of the results system, but it was merely a technical glitch that had been resolved. How much damage could this cause to the credibility of the elections?
Well, enormous, impact, particularly because of the intensity of the campaign of the political parties and how the results have panned out. There is a lot of suspicion about the commission, and this has been there throughout the whole election campaign. And then now when you have glitches like those, they really dent the image of the organization, and people no longer really believe whatever they hear from the commission. And I think the commission has got a lot of work to do in order to try to restore its credibility, and for political parties, particularly those who are not happy with this process, to finally begin to accept what the commission is actually presenting. So those glitches have got a negative impact in terms of the image of the organization.
Because there had been Section 55 objections raised, and the IEC has also come out to say that every results objection made by political parties, independent candidates will be considered and they will be dealt with, including a possible recount, a vote to recount. What would that mean for the results? And at this point, could we be seeing the announcement of the final results delayed as a result? Talk us through what's at stake.
Well, the commission has got the power to determine when they're going to be announcing the results. In terms of the constitution, they've got to declare this within 7 days. Today is the 4th day. Normally, the commission is able to announce the results on the 3rd day. But because of the complexity of these elections, it was not possible to announce this yesterday, and the intention was to do it today. But they still have a few days in order to finalize this particular aspect, but they have to announce the results within 7 days. So if they're not able to do it today, they still have tomorrow to do it, but they would like to announce this as quickly as possible so that the country can actually proceed with its business of everyday life. And I think it is in the interest of everybody that eventually we have a result that we can work on.
Thank you for clarifying that as well. I actually want to go back to that election survey. I know you did disclaim that you hadn't sifted through it fully, but just looking at what had emerged, I mean, we saw 63% of the voters felt that their voting did make a difference and had a big influence on their decision to vote. From your vantage point, given the shifting political landscape, do you think that it is indicative of the growth of the country's democracy as well? And also just because, the election has not had a clear majority winner. Can we also attribute this to the large number of political parties that had entered the political spectrum, the independent candidates that had also contested?
Well, it has always been an anomaly in a proportional representation system to have one dominant political party. And I think this had largely had to do with the history of this country, the fact that, we had one common enemy, and the African National Congress in particular was seen as an organization that represented the overwhelming majority of people in the fight against the apartheid system. So the majority of people, therefore, were voting for one political party. But the proportional representation system is premised on power sharing. So if a political party, because political party gets representation on the basis of the number of votes it receives, political parties would then have to sit down and agree on how they deal with issues of governance. Under normal circumstances, if you look at Western Europe, most of those countries that are under a proportional representation system, they've been under coalition arrangements since 1945. So it was always going to be an anomaly. So now that we're beginning to see things normalizing, you'll begin to see that it is no longer going to be possible going forward to have one dominant political party for as long as we're using proportional representation system. So the issue of coalition and arrangements of multi-party system will be with us for a long, long time now.
Freedom from intimidation is also important. And in reference to the survey, I mean, some of the criteria included from the HSRC, just found that the voting public in the 2024 national provincial elections placed a high value on having the political space free from that intimidation and to make their own political choices, how they see fit. How important is this in our democratic country, especially in South Africa at this juncture?
It is quite critical. You remember that around 1994, the biggest problem in South Africa was that there were certain areas that were designated as no-go areas for certain political formations. So a political party could not canvass in a particular area because that area was regarded as stronghold for another. Now, that level of intimidation has basically disappeared. You can even see now, even in families, it is possible for members of the same family to have different political parties or support different political formations. And I think that goes with the maturity of our society and the level of tolerance. And I think it's a good thing for the society and the development of our democracy.
Let me conclude by just looking at some of the calls to action from here and to, given what's transpired. There, are possible talks about these results, putting to task the constitutional principles of cooperative governance at large. And also, there are going to be significant implications as a result for the country at large, nationally and provincially. What are your thoughts on that? Perhaps also, as we look at, the direction South Africa is headed in from here and to, the political landscape that had been shifting. What are you observing on that front?
Indeed, I mean, these results will have serious implications in terms of governance going forward for this country. And unfortunately, our country is ill prepared to manage the issues of coalition. I would have thought that at the time when the Deputy President initiated that process of coalition dialogue, that it was going to lead to a framework that would then be utilized for eventuality like this. Now we've got this situation, but we're still struggling to manage coalitions in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni and all other areas where we've got a coalition arrangement. Political parties still don't have the capacity to work together to be able to drive one or few strategic objectives together. Any political party that is in a coalition believes that it's got to push its own manifesto instead of actually looking at key strategic challenges facing that particular area and saying, we must get together to deal with the following challenges that are facing the society. So it is going to be difficult going forward, but I think ultimately a solution will have to be found, and I still believe that there will have to be a regulation of this relationship, because we can't have a situation where there is so much uncertainty in terms of governance because of unpredictability of the current coalition arrangement.
That's definitely a separate conversation starter, because I also wanted to look at the issue of accountability at large within the National Assembly. I mean, if we're looking at the different parties that will be represented and independent candidates, what do you think it also does for accountability at large, just as we wrap up?
I think, we have started moving in the right direction. And the fact that there is a panel that is going to be looking into the electoral reform, that panel, in my opinion, has got to address the issue of accountability and the issue of creating some kind of constituency system, because the only way that we can have people who then are accountable to particular clearly defined constituencies is when there is a delimitation of our country into clearly definable constituencies so that they know they represent the particular constituency. Currently, we don't have any constituency. It's only one South African constituency.
All right, Mr. Tselane, let's leave that conversation there. Thank you for your time at this hour. Former IEC Deputy Chairperson, current Executive Chairman, Institute of Election Management Services in Africa, chatting to us about the Independent Electoral Commission's performance in this year's election, the results, the implications, and also the results announcement processes. This is the IEC is expected to announce the final results later today, of which we, of course, are monitoring.